54% of women with ADHD are more likely to spend on impulse compared to men that also have ADHD. In this video, you are going to find out what is actually happening in the ADHD brain before impulsive spending occurs. This video is all about turning down the dial on guilt and asking the one question that can actually interrupt the pattern before impulsive spending takes over. Allow me to get straight to the point and ask you this question. When it comes to impulsive spending, what's the story you've been telling yourself that led you to believe that's who you are with money? Because when you're just telling yourself that you're not going to buy anything, you're just looking, just scrolling, and then somehow you finalize the purchase, the real reason spending on impulse happens is not because of lack of self-control or because you're bad with money. By the end of this video, you'll be able to identify triggers and patterns that lead to impulsive spending. You'll also have a chance to start writing a new story. I'm also going to share my favorite question, the one that gives me some thinking space so that I can redirect instead of acting on impulse. So make sure you stay until the end. Spending on impulse feels louder when boredom, stress, an anxious feeling is present, and they make fast relief incredibly tempting for the ADHD brain. The way I see it, impulsive spending is by far the biggest money leak, as 31% of ADHDers are going to struggle with debt compared to 11% of the general population. When I spent on impulse, besides the fact that I had ADHD and had no idea it impacted my ability to manage money, my relationship with money was pretty crappy. On top of that, avoidance is how I dealt with my finances until things were so out of control that everything collapsed. So I decided to take the bull by the horns and get this money situation of mine under control. I have to say that it was an uphill battle, but the thought that someday it would allow me to help other ADHD women to uncover their money blueprint kept me motivated. And of course, along the way, what I did is that I really found a way to do it that really matched my ADHD brain. And there's nothing more I would love than help you do the same, because all of the ADHD roadblocks and friction points that come with ADHD and money can be discouraging and overwhelming. So helping you means that you get to face less roadblocks and friction points, which is a good thing. And I have something coming real soon that is going to help ADHD women just like you have a starting point that will allow you to go from avoidance to engagement so that future financial progress is possible. If this is making sense and is allowing you to see spending on impulse differently, make sure you subscribe to my channel and that you share this video with a fellow women ADHDer who maybe needs to hear that impulsive spending has nothing to do with lack of self-control and is not a character flaw. Struggling with impulsive spending doesn't make you some rare exception. Not at all. In fact, you're part of 54% of women with ADHD for whom it's a challenge. And on a larger spectrum, just know that approximately 70% of ADHDers have difficulty with managing money. And I know that these numbers are high and quite alarming, but what they are actually revealing is that spending impulsively is actually one of the most common friction or collision between ADHD and money. Yet, financial advice is still pointing to lack of discipline or self control to explain this issue. Well, ADHDers don't get up one morning and decide they're going to blow money they don't have and rack up the credit card that's already over the limit. What looks like a money problem is often something entirely different. And what I'm talking about here is the dopamine connection. ADHD brains have less dopamine available, and low dopamine increases ADHD challenges. Just think about what happens after a difficult day. You've been making tremendous efforts just to stay on top of things. You're mentally exhausted, you're emotionally depleted, maybe you're bored, maybe you're overwhelmed, maybe you're stuck in rumination, or maybe it's all of the above. When that happens, your brain starts looking for a way to change that feeling. And spending just so happens to be the quickest way available to create a dopamine surge. And for some, it's going to be comfort buying, where you buy things that really bring a sense of relief. So you're purchasing items that are comforting. For others, well, it's going to be spending on retail therapy. So experiences, courses, trainings meant to fix a feeling that's hard to name. Personally, impulsive spending was all about enjoying life and having fun now, which is typically ADHD. We don't like to wait, and our brain loves instant gratification. I love to travel. I mean, that's my favorite of all things to do in life. So, several times in the past, I put thousands of dollars on my credit cards to pay for trips I just didn't have the money for. But at the time, it didn't matter because I told myself that dealing with the consequences would come at a later time. Of course, the consequences would eventually catch up with me, but I didn't see that because projecting ourselves in the future is hard when you have ADHD. And I didn't really have an idea of what the repercussions could be, which is also an ADHD thing. That's why, even if you've tried to stop impulsive spending countless times, you believe you lack self control. You don't. When you think of impulsive spending, just keep in mind that what's really happening is that whatever the feeling, your brain is trying or is looking for a way to get relief. And spending happens to be the best shortcut. If you'd like to understand your patterns and triggers a little bit more in depth, I've linked the ADHD and money friction quiz in the description below. It's designed to help you identify the different ways ADHD could be affecting your relationship with money. And it's also a first step to moving the dial from avoidance to engagement. At the beginning of this video, I asked you a question. When you think about impulsive spending, what's the story you've been telling yourself that led you to believe that's who you are with money? Now that you know that impulsive spending is linked with a low level of dopamine and that it also involves emotional dysregulation, you now know that the story you've been telling yourself is untrue. The thing about impulsive spending is that it doesn't really give us much room to think and redirect. Having a few buffers is key because they will give you that space that you need. And I'm not talking about cutting your credit cards or putting them in the freezer. Asking yourself, how do I stop spending, isn't going to help. But these two questions will, and the second one is by far my favorite. Question number one, what am I trying to get out of, escape, make stop right now? Question number two, what options do I have to meet my needs that doesn't involve impulsive spending? These questions create space, and that's oftentimes just the tiny little pause you need that can change everything. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and that you give this video a like. Until next time, make sure you keep on rocking that phenomenal ADHD brilliance of yours, and I will catch you in the next video.